This video relies heavily on adapted material by Lucy Herman, Lauren Brodsky, Hillary Sprider, Mary Stroud, and Xandra Jordan. I'm Kathleen Tarr. Presentations. Beware the curse of knowledge. You have to know your audience. You may know a lot of data and be excited to share it, but if your audience can't follow and can't remember it, what purpose is it serving? Remember to edit it down to the essentials. When you chart an audience's attention over the time of your presentation, it generally looks like this: the yellow line. The higher for stronger speakers, the lower for less strong speakers, but usually the same shape. Attention during the introduction and a big dip during the body of your presentation with some additional engagement as you conclude. What you want is what the blue line shows. You want people to effectively engage in your transitions. Feel free to ask the audience questions. What you want is for them to stay as attentive as they can. They're going to be dips, but you want to keep them as attentive as possible. Part of that is knowing your age. Just like the rings of a tree trunk reveal some of the most important characteristics of the tree, notably its age, the acronym AGE helps a speaker hone in on the most important elements of the talk. A is for audience. Are you speaking to a general audience or a more narrow one? Are they lab members? Are you at a conference? Are they clients? Think about what that audience is and what is it that they hold in common and what they need to know. Goal. Are you trying to convince them of something? Move them into action? Get funding? Whatever that goal is, make sure you're very clear about what it is you want from that audience. Environment. Are you going to be in a small conference room? How many screens are there? Where will you stand? Is there a mic? Is there amplification in the room? Best to always bring your own equipment as possible as a plan B. Think about how many talks you've been to where the speaker has had to ask someone for a laser pointer or an adapter or something else. Don't let that be you. Make sure you're aware of the environment in which you will be presenting. Organizing your content. Of course, there's an introduction. There's a body to it, usually about 3 main points, but don't feel like you have to stick with that number. Use transitions and then summarize. Remember that less is more. People assume that what you put on a slide is important, and they will focus on that and not you. They're going to read instead of listen. Just think about whether you've been listening to my voice or if you've been trying to read the screen in front of you. If you have more than one point on your slide, bring it up one at a time. Low light the others so the audience stays with you. Your slide deck should be visual and it should be for the audience. It shouldn't be where you put your notes to yourself. If you feel like you need to put a lot of text on a slide to make sure you get your point across, the way to do it is to have those notes in your presenter notes and speak those while having less on the screen. Have a point for each slide. Be critical. What is the point for that slide? If it doesn't support your goal or your main points, leave it out. If there's an idea you want to remember just for you, again, remember, put it in your presenter notes. If you don't have a point or an image for a slide, if you'd like the audience to be paying attention to what you're saying, go blank. This is a great tool. This example is adapted from Gar Reynolds' presentation Zen. Blogs are like sharks. If you look at this template, which is prepackaged, it interferes with the data presentation. People have also already seen them and will think you're just a lazy designer. Don't use templates. Don't use pink colors, light colors, all other sorts of strange texts. Do something simple. Again, less is more. It's a picture of a shark. Use Creative Commons images or public domain, as this one is from Pixabay. Blogs are like sharks. The rest of the explanation can come just from what you're going to say. And there should be 5 questions about every slide. Does everything on it aesthetically please? Does it support my main goal? Does it help my audience to understand? Does it match their level of expertise? And does it match the content of my delivery? Don't speak about content in a slide until you are actually showing your audience that slide. Remember also to interact with your slide. Don't over-orient to the slides, meaning turning and watching your slides rather than your audience. But if you need to gesture, that's very helpful. If there's something on the slide you want to point to for your audience, please do that. Posture is also important. That's part of what gesturing is. Usually when you're looking at a slide that you want to interact with, it's going to have data. So think too about how you're presenting data. This, for example, is a relatively busy slide, and you've seen busier. The title is pretty long. The chart is fairly engaging. but also lots of content. If you want to make sure your audience pays attention, give simple titles. You can fill in the rest with your words and show data one at a time just to keep your audience focused on where you want them to be. Tell a story with the numbers. Tell the people what you want them to notice through the visuals. Do the math for them. Most audiences don't want to work that hard to understand your presentation. It's important that you pick colors that use a good contrast. If there's not a good contrast, it becomes harder for your audience to actually see what it is that you're trying to get them to look at. When they have to work hard, you lose their attention. Remember that colors evoke emotion. So any kinds of colors that might disrupt their emotional interaction with your presentation, you want to use those only when you're drafting for fun, and then switch to something that's more engaging. A black background with white text or a slightly off-white text is usually the preferred. Use color sparingly for emphasis only. You don't need to have elaborate colors on your slides. Size and font. These are different point Arial fonts. Make sure that the room you're in, you know what they're going to look like. Essentially, you want to make sure the people in the back of the room can easily read what you have on their slide. Also, try to use fonts without serifs. Now, delivery. You're going to have to practice, and practice a lot. Practicing will help you improve nonverbal behaviors, voice issues, anything with verbal delivery that's throwing you off, like filler words. Speech anxiety. It'll also help the flow of your presentation, what transitions you need. This is super important if you're doing a group presentation. The timing, also super important for groups, but even for an individual. It will help you make sure that you're speaking within the time that you've been given. Voice. Your voice is the main way that information is getting to your audience. There's a difference between projection and volume. You've got to make sure you're loud enough for the person in the back of the room to hear, but you don't want them to feel like you're yelling at them. Make sure you're also enunciating. Where did the sounds come from in your mouth? Speed, tone, pausing and breathing. You can try vocal yoga classes. You're supposed to be connecting with your audience. So you're going to be looking at each person in your audience. Part of that is to check to make sure that they understand what you're saying, and that if you see any facial cues that show confusion, you can clarify on the spot. But also, you want to have a conversation with your audience. You want them to feel like you are connecting with them personally in your presentation. That's going to help them take away what it is that you want them to from your presentation and make them accept and celebrate you more as a speaker. So just remember, when you're doing a whole presentation, what's going on when we stand up in front of a group of people, the different levels of communication we're sending them. There's the content, the goal, the message, and the information that is supported by how you say it, the words you use, your tone, your volume, enunciation, and the visuals. This also includes your body and gestures. That's part of what the visuals are, not just the images you put in your slide deck. All of this comes together to project that meta message, whatever your demeanor, your body language, even your clothes, the slides, the content. What does it tell your audience? Is it getting to your goal?